Hey there, this is the One Boom, and today we are reviewing the Cronen Squall, or in real life, the RM277. Now, in case you're new to the channel, this isn't a deep stat dive, because I don't think in-game a lot of the number stats are really going to matter to you. What really matters is feel and loadout. This gun has some interesting quirks, and is sort of best in class in some areas and then worse in class in others. To save some of your time, I'm going to tell you the thing you might not know right off the bat, and that is that the Cronen Squall has a pre-fire delay of 45 milliseconds, at least according to Synthic.gg. I don't know of any other weapons in this game that have a pre-fire delay, but this one apparently does, at least according to, again, sim.gg. That's the website I use to get my stats before I make these videos, and that is this weapon's biggest downside, is that there's like a 45, apparently, millisecond delay between pulling the trigger and the bullet leaving the gun. Is that going to lose you a lot of gunfights? Probably not. It didn't lose me a lot of gunfights as far as I could tell. And honestly, I would say ignore that stat because I didn't know that stat was there the entire time I was playing. It didn't affect me. It could even be a false stat. I don't know. But that is the biggest quirk I could see when analyzing the gun's stats. But the weapon itself is great. It has a very low profile on screen, as well as having really solid quality iron sights. These are like the Honey Badger from Ghost or the ARX-160 from Ghost in Advanced Warfare. It's basically the ISO Hemlock sights without the rear ring on the rear sight, and that's great. So it's basically just a better ISO iron sight, so I would definitely recommend using them. And this gun does have some unique attachments, such as composite ammo. Just like the real-life RM277, it can fire a sort of polymer ammunition where the casing is essentially made of plastic, and it does lighten your load a little bit. You do get a little bit better aim down sight and sprint to fire speed, but it does hurt your damage range and bullet velocity, just not by much. By default, the Cronen Squall has around a 660 meters per second bullet velocity, and this is going to shorten it just to about 590. So like a 590 bullet velocity can be made up for with a suppressor or a longer barrel, so it's not a big deal. And what you get when you do that, you do get like 6 milliseconds shaved off your ADS time, 14 milliseconds shaved off your sprint to fire speed, and 25 milliseconds shaved off your tactical sprint to fire. So it's kind of interesting. It barely hurts your gun, but kind of barely helps it. But more on the topic of sprint to fire speed, just like the AUG, the Bullpup Assault Rifle, this Bullpup Battle Rifle has the best in class sprint to fire speed at 140 milliseconds. And from what I can tell, with the right attachments, and this would be a very unbalanced loadout, you can get it all the way down to 63 millisecond sprint to fire speed, which is insane for a battle rifle. Again, that's according to the Synthic website that I'm using, but we'll have to see. I don't know. I don't know if Exclusive Aces tested this in practice. I'm just going off of the website here. That's what it says I can get it down to. We don't really know. But it is worth noting that if you want to use an aggressive battle rifle, this is your guy. I was wondering why for a around 600 RPM battle rifle it was so good in close quarters, and I remembered, oh, if it does the same thing the AUG does, it's going to have a crazy low sprint to fire speed, and it really does. And of course, with most of my weapons, I use the FSS OLEV laser, and if you do that, you're going to have a really competitive sprint to fire speed. You're going to be competing against SMGs in that category. You just kind of have to account for that, fire delay of 45 milliseconds. Again, if that's real, I only have the stats in front of me. This weapon also has a unique suppressor, but it's just a suppressor that hurts your damage range a little bit, and of course your aiming stability, aim walking speed, aim down sight speed, but helps with recoil smoothness and control. From what I can tell, it's okay at managing recoil, and you mostly just rock this for the iconic RM277 drip that you see every time you look up this weapon online. It has this sort of, not integrated suppressor, but custom built suppressor. It's very cool. It's just, not the most practical thing to use all the time. Now, speaking of practicality and moving away from its quirkiness, there is another unique attachment this gun came with, but I'm going to review that separately in a different video. Some of you already know what that is, but we'll talk about that later. But I want to get into the versatility of this weapon. Now, with a lot of the battle rifles, it does encourage you, they all do encourage you, to swap between semi and full auto, depending on where you're at. The SO14 is amazing in full auto, the FTAC Recon's better in semi, but is still serviceable in full auto, and they really want you to use that selector switch. It's not just a novelty, it's not just there to, jerk off the realism bros. Like, it is a really good utility. And I'm going to say, out of all of the battle rifles, it has the best semi and full auto performance. In semi-auto, you're able to one-tap people to the head at around 20-25 meters, and then past that, you're going to be getting 2 shots to the head So of course, you guessed it, it is a really good counter sniper tool. Now, even more fun, in its semi-auto mode, it's dealing this higher damage, which is great. But if you combine that with high velocity rounds, the longest barrel, and two of the largest suppressors, the ones that help your velocity the most, you can get a 1500 meter per second muzzle velocity. That is of course insane. If you have a 1500 meter per second bullet velocity with this semi-auto damage, with its full auto versatility, you are going to be the king of ground war and invasion. I think it's going to be a really good DMZ weapon, because again, its versatility is there. You have the fast sprint to fire speed and great full auto performance, getting, 3-shot kills past where the TAC V can. That's sort of the next thing I want to get into, is that compared to the TAC V, it's just a better TAC V in most areas, if not all areas, that I could see on Synthic. So there's that. And so you have this fast sprint to fire, great full auto performance, great semi-auto performance weapon that is heavily customizable. You can run the 20 round mag, the 30 round mag, the 50 round mag. You can run different sniper scopes, longer barrels, shorter barrels. Like, this weapon has no shortage of versatility. I can get this thing to feel as snappy as an SMG or as proficient at long range as some of the marksman rifles. If you tell me to use the EBR, I might use the Cronen Squall. If you tell me to use the TAC V, I might use the Cronen Squall. If you tell me to use the SO14, I might use the Cronen Squall. That's the main point I want to get across here. This thing is so versatile, but it's not just like, oh, jack of all trades, master of none. The trades that it's jacking off are actually really good, and I'm never going to word anything like that again. And how do I know it's so versatile? Well, I was running attachments that were technically, after looking at the stats later, technically not as good as other attachments, but I was like, oh, this is the build right here. On stream I was talking about how I found the right build, I found the right muzzle and underbarrel, and then looking at the stats I realized, oh, those aren't actually optimal at all. I could have been using something better. And then I realized this is a good thing. Me being wrong is, for once, a good thing. I realized that means that I am dealing with a gun that even if you put the wrong attachments on, it's going to feel really good. Now, obviously you can make this gun completely imbalanced in one direction or the other, but if you put on a muzzle brake, flash hider suppressor, or a vertical grip, or horizontal grip, or a stubby grip, if you put on the movement stock, and a suppressor, and a laser, and an optic, likely, you are not going to be screwing up the gun, especially when you unlock tuning, and you can take whatever attachments you have and tune them in the direction that more fits your playstyle. So getting into attachments, here's one of the builds I was using that I thought was amazing before looking at the stats, and it was like, yeah, the Bore 490, the Edge 47, the high velocity ammunition, the 30 round mag, and the FSS OLEV. I was doing really well with this, and then I realized I didn't need to be using high velocity in 6v6 because it already has a really good bullet velocity, okay? The Bore 490 is not as good as the Leveler or the Sack and Tread 40. The Edge 47 is not as good as some of the other angled grip, but it didn't matter. It was still working. So this build works really well, but you don't exactly need it. Then I was rocking this build on smaller maps. Again, the Bore 490, which is not that great, but it doesn't matter. It does help, but it's not that great. The B13 pad, the 50 round drum mag, and the OLEV, and then of course the 16-inch barrel for a little bit more just close quarters, faster action, really good for shipment. The 50 round drum mag does weigh down the gun a little bit, but not too much. It still feels very snappy because your sprint to fire speed is already so high by default. Then in Invasion and Ground War, I tried rocking this. Yeah, I didn't play super well with it, but I did enjoy using it. This was a really good sniper build with the Polar Fire S, the HR 6.8 barrel, the just 1 milliwatt PEC for aiming stability, the Vigilant Sea Iron that came with the ISO Hemlock. It has the canted iron sights. A lot of images you see online of the real-life RM277 have canted iron sights, so very, very tactical there. And then the B66 pad just for stability and recoil control. Now, if you want to be a little bit more versatile, you want to play the weapon to its actual versatile strengths, I would recommend this. This actually worked really well. The Angel Hybrid Optic, you guys know that's one of my favorites. Then we have the OLEV, F-Tac Ripper, overpressurized rounds, I'll explain that in a second, and the B66 pad. This is a counter sniper aggressive assault rifle build. Like, you can run this aggressively and in a lot of versatile scenarios, maybe not overly aggressive, but definitely aggressive enough to matter. And then you swap over to that, high zoom optic, then pop over to semi-auto, and you're starting to hit people with overpressurized rounds, you're going to be counter-sniping people because, you know, if they have a sniper scope on you, hit them with one of those overpressurized rounds, suddenly they're shooting over your head. So really good, versatile, you know, aggressive plus anti-sniper class. Then this one. This is just a drip build. I think this just looks really good. I got the Bruin tilt grip, the custom suppressor for this weapon, the OLEV again, I think it's really good on this gun, then the hybrid firepoint optic and the SAB comb. This also just works. You have a good hybrid optic, which I think hybrid optics are the way to go on this gun more often than not. And the reason I say that is because the full auto and semi-auto performance are both so good that being able to take advantage of its long range capabilities and its short range capabilities is a must-have. Now, if I only told you this gun was amazing, I would be lying. It does have a little bit of wobble. So using some horizontal recoil control and some recoil stabilization things is preferred. You don't want to challenge people at long range with this gun's wobbly recoil. There is a little bit of zigzagginess to it, so if you're trying to pop people at a distance, even in semi-auto, you're going to find yourself missing some important shots. So definitely tune to recoil stabilization. Try to make your recoil consistent. Try to just, again, balance it for yourself the way that works for you. But that's really the only negative of the gun, is that it does have a little bit of an unpredictable recoil pattern, so at a distance it can be pretty bad. But for 6v6 engagements, if you put on a Merc foregrip and a suppressor and a red dot sight, this thing's good to go. So that's the end of my Cronen Squall review. I don't think this weapon needs a nerf. I do still think it is niche enough in the battle rifle category that it's, yes, very versatile, but it's still a 20 round BR. I don't think it's going to dominate the meta, but it's definitely going to appeal to a lot of different types of players for a lot of different types of reasons, which I think is just a good sign that it's versatile. If I find this weapon to be overpowered, I'll make another video about it, but yeah, that's the end of my review. Sorry it's a little bit long-winded, but we're going over the fact that this is basically a DMR AR, God, with a 50 round mag and a bipod and a long barrel, kind of an LMG. Like, it is just so good for so many different use cases. Anyway, let me know what you think about the Cronen Squall down in the comment section below, and I will see you when I see you, kids. Goodbye.